Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to do a breakdown and review of the Season 5 premiere of Star Trek Discovery, the final season. It was a 2-episode premiere, so let's get right into the episode recaps. The first one was called Red Directive, and the episode opens on Michael riding atop an alien vessel at warp as she's trying to get inside of it to retrieve something that its crew stole. We then get a flashback to 4 hours earlier, and the bridge crew is at some kind of function. Stamets is in a mood because they've decided to end the Spore Drive program in favor of a new type of faster-than-light drive called Pathway, which has him worried that his legacy will be having developed a technology that never went anywhere. Saru tells his girlfriend, the president of Not Vulcan, while they're having a slow dance, that he's been offered an ambassadorship, which would require him to resign his Starfleet commission. Michael and Admiral Vance attend a meeting in a virtual secure location with Dr. Kovich, in which Discovery is given a red directive to go to the edge of the Beta Sector to secure an 800-year-old Romulan science ship that's apparently there unexpectedly, and which contains an item that Starfleet doesn't want anyone else to get. On said ship, a pair of what would seem to be romantically involved pirates or marauders, Maul and Locke, show up in search of the same item. When Discovery arrives, Michael's ordered by Dr. Kovich to set phasers to kill and to secure the ship by any means necessary. Michael then leads an away team onto the ship, and it isn't long before they run into a decaying Romulan corpse, which, though it is decaying, looks like it's only been decaying for a few months, not 800 years. Before the pirates from before uncloak their physical bodies right there in the room and zap Michael's officers with a pretty cool-looking immobilizing bubble, the away team realizes that the pirates who they now know are there seem to have broken some Romulan encryption in less time than it would have taken normally, even though it's 800 years old, and one would assume that an 800-year-old bit of encryption wouldn't take as long in the 32nd century as it would have 800 years before. So I'm not sure what they were impressed about. Michael then confronts the Marauders, who toss a bomb at her, which dissolves the floor of the ship underneath her, causing her to fall through it in a way that didn't resemble being blown out of a ship in space, at which point she's immediately enveloped in her Starfleet spacesuit before she manages to tumble in space onto the top of the alien ship, which is cloaked until she lands on it, and which she magnetizes herself to. The warp bubble starts to decay as the Antari shows up and grabs the alien ship in its tractor beam and starts working on a way to get Michael off the hull. Discovery soon shows up as well, also intent on rescuing the captain, and there are now 3 ships chasing each other at warp inside the same warp bubble. The Antares is forced to release the alien ship from its tractor beam to prevent the warp bubble from collapsing and damaging the Antares and harming Michael, at which point the ship gets away after dropping a bunch of fake warp signature buoys, which also go in different directions to keep themselves from being tracked easily. Michael is then insta-beamed through the Discovery's bridge window before crashing into it, at which point her spacesuit immediately dissolves. Michael then recruits Book because she believes he can suss out which warp signature is the real one, which of course he does immediately. The Admiral orders the Discovery and the Antares to go to the location where the ship has been tracked to and instructs Michael to take Book along for the ride. Michael and Saru then conspire to go digging into a different Starfleet database than what they normally have access to in order to try to get more information about their mission. To do this, they need Tilly's help, so they reach out to her at Starfleet Academy, where she's apparently a little tipsy after the reception, where they apparently served real Andorian alcohol, at which point she immediately refers to Michael as Michael instead of Captain, which she should do regardless of the fact that she's no longer serving under her on Discovery. Michael, Book, and Captain Rayner of the Antares then beam down incognito to the planet where Book suspects our marauders are going to visit a particular dealer named Fred, who very much appears to be a Sung-type android, who begins working the puzzle on the exterior of the box from the Romulan ship in order to open it. Upon opening it, a book is revealed, and Fred begins reading it at super speed. When he then offers the Marauders a low amount for their wares, fisticuffs break out because he declines to return the items to them so they can try to get a better price elsewhere. When the dust settles, they've managed to kill poor Fred. Michael orders Fred's body, which wouldn't necessarily be dead, beamed up to Discovery so they can try to scan his memory for information and so that they might identify his family, which I suppose he could have even though he's an android. And it turns out that he's not one of Dr. Soong's creations, but a type of android made in that style by someone else, which nonetheless causes Stamets to marvel at the fact that so many centuries later they're still talking about Dr. Soong. Tilly gets caught hacking into the Federation database by Admiral Vance, who remarks that the secrecy of this mission is a little bit unusual even for a Red Directive mission, and then participates in completing the hack, which reveals a Romulan hologram, which begins to explain what they're all chasing. After getting a lead on where our marauders went, Book, Michael, and Captain Rayner go off chasing them on 32nd century desert cycles on the planet's surface, and when they determine that they're about to enter a series of tunnels under a mountain in order to avoid being caught up with, Captain Rayner orders the Antares to blow up an explosive that the marauders have placed outside the entrance to the tunnels in advance in order to prevent pursuit, against the advice of Michael, who realizes that it will probably cause an avalanche and destroy the nearby settlement. Detonating the explosive does not cause an avalanche, but the marauders then fire their own weapons at the mountain, and an avalanche does in fact occur, causing Commander Stamets to suggest that both the Antares and the Discovery park themselves between the settlement and the boulders of the avalanche, which Captain Rayner initially resists doing because he'd prefer to chase the aliens sooner rather than later. But he then has a change of heart and agrees to help Michael, which one would think Kovich would have ordered him to do anyway, instead of leaving it up to him since he was monitoring the whole conversation. Book and Michael then lament the fact that neither of them reached out to the other while they were apart, and the ensuing conversation leads to them breaking up. Saru then informs his girlfriend that he's going to take the ambassadorship, at which point she suggests they take their relationship to the next level by means of what, in her words, some cultures would call marriage. It turns out that Stamets and Dr. Culber were able to download what Fred's eyes recorded when he was reading through the book, at which point Michael thinks she knows exactly which system is being referenced in the book because of a depiction of the system, which has 2 moons. So she confronts Kovich about the secrecy of the situation, at which point he tells her that the mission is no longer hers because he has a team that's going to search every 2-moon system in the galaxy to figure out where they need to go, because absurdly, he doesn't yet have the information from the diary, which Michael has. After Michael ridiculously holds that over his head, he relents and informs her that the mission they're on is to prevent the Marauders from finding what they're all after first, because apparently it's technology that belongs to the progenitors, a race from Star Trek Next Generation that created all life in the known universe, which the Romulan at some point discovered and then hid away. And that's where that episode ended. So, I've never liked this series very much. There are moments where it's okay, but that's about it. And it's just not a good show, and it's definitely not good Star Trek. This episode was gorgeous to look at. It had good action, but it's just stupid. They obviously tied themselves in knots to bring Booker and Tilly back. And that's fine, but they didn't do it in a way that's believable. You're telling me there was no one in Starfleet who could do what Book could do in 3.5 seconds and figure out which of those warp signatures was the real one? Come on. That's just stupid. Extremely stupid. Then when they need to hack a database, there was no one on the ship, who could do that. They had to get Tilly. If you want to bring her in, find a way to do it, whatever. But that was just dumb. Like, there's no one on the ship that could do it that Michael could trust. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It begs the question, why did they send her to Starfleet Academy at the end of the previous season to begin with? Like, I don't know, was she not necessarily going to come back and then changed her mind? And now they're trying to work her back in? I don't know. It just was dumb, dumb, dumb. It was a dumb thing to do. Then, these people they're chasing knew that they might have to flee in a hurry, so they planted bombs in advance at the entrance to a tunnel. I'm not buying it. And then, Captain Raynar is hemming and hawing about he doesn't want to do the thing. And then he decides to, which is fine. But that whole time, Kovich, who can give orders to captains, right, which we've seen, doesn't say anything, doesn't get involved, even though he's listening to the whole conversation and everything that's going on in the bridge. He doesn't just say, Captain Rayner, it's not up to you, do it. Why? Because they wanted to show Rayner being a maverick. Why? Because it comes up later. There's something that's going to happen in the next episode and then the future episodes that necessitated them showing that he's kind of an upstart, a kind of a maverick, kind of a jerk. But that was just the wrong way to do it because it didn't make sense logically. Also, why would access to the recording that Michael's team found inside Fred's head not have immediately been shown to Kovic if he's in charge of this mission? So the idea that she was able to say, I have this information and you don't, so you better tell me what I want to know, is ridiculous. That wouldn't happen in a Starfleet setting. It would not happen. So it's just dumb. It's dumb. It's interesting that they've brought in the progenitors. I'm interested to see where they go with that, so I can't knock that. And it was interesting to see this android that kind of resembles a Sung type. That was a little nod to, Data and all that, and that's fine. But they just throw in all these things that don't make sense and that scream contrived. And, Saru dancing with his not Vulcan yet still Vulcan girlfriend, dumb. Her proposing marriage, dumb. Ships chasing each other inside the same warp bubble. Now, it's the 32nd century, so I can't sit here and say that's not possible, but it wasn't possible in the 23rd century or the 24th century on Star Trek, as far as I know. Suddenly, 3 ships can be inside the same warp bubble, and ships can catch each other at warp. I mean, okay, it's the 32nd century, maybe that's a thing, but they never explain it. To be fair, it would be hard to work that into the dialogue and not make it look like they were explaining it for the sake of explaining it. But I don't think they had to do it at warp, and then the whole thing where she falls out of the spaceship. She doesn't get blown out. It didn't look like. She just falls out like gravity is working in space, which it's not. And I don't know. I just have problems with this show. And, it's yet another wild goose chase. They said, oh, this season's going to be different. They're not going to be, trying to prevent some galaxy-wide catastrophe. Well, yeah, they are. Yes, they are. They're trying to prevent the wrong hands from coming into possession of this item because it could be dangerous to the whole galaxy. It's the same plot again for the 3rd season in a row. Excuse me, 4th season in a row. I don't get it. I don't get why they keep doing this. It's just another MacGuffin that they're chasing through the galaxy. Anyway, let's get to the next episode. It was called Under the Twin Moons. As it starts, Michael ponders in a log entry whether finding the tech they're chasing will offer answers to why humanity is here, and more personally, what her own purpose is, which she always thought was the mission, but isn't necessarily sure. Michael and Raynar are called before the Federation President Council to answer questions about what happened vis-a-vis the avalanche, and Michael is asked whether or not she agreed with Captain Raynar's decision to blow the bomb at the base of the mountain, which is dumb because they already know she didn't agree because it was all over comms in real time while it was happening and is a matter of record. So dumb. Nonetheless, Michael tries not to answer the question to not jam up Raynar, but when she's forced to answer, Raynar gets a little bit out of hand about the whole proceeding, and it takes way too long for the Admiral to rein him in. The Admiral then informs Michael that he wants her to take Book along because Book is familiar with the 2 particular marauders, and because of other things from his days as a courier that might prove helpful. Even though Michael spent a bunch of her time right next to him doing the same stuff he was doing during the burn, and he also explained to her that Booker could prove invaluable on the mission, even though the last time they saw Book, he was quite the thorn in Starfleet's side and the Federation's side, and he pulled a crazy, stupid stunt that risked the safety of the Federation. But all of a sudden, a few months later, let's trust him to help us on this very important mission. Again, just to get Book in and keep him there. Stupid. Stupid. Saru says he's staying aboard Discovery for the last mission before taking his new posting. Tilly's back aboard Discovery, borrowed from the Academy for this mission as an especially skilled science officer, apparently. Book pays a visit to sickbay wearing his coat to inquire what the doctor knows about the Marauders for some reason, which isn't much. While reviewing footage of the Marauders' getaway, Book realizes that they're just a couple of crazy kids in love, free and out there doing what they want to do, and he very much seems to get nostalgic for a particular prior time in his own life. Saru and Michael have a heart-to-heart as they approach a location in the woods on their search for the MacGuffin, and when the subject comes around to the fact that Michael needs a new first officer, she mentions that it can't be Tilly because she's off at Starfleet Academy, which is a reference to the fact that she was temporarily first officer before, while still an ensign, if not a cadet, which of course was absurd at the time. And in a moment of doubling down on absurd, Saru stops short of suggesting that she choose Book, who isn't even in Starfleet. Soon thereafter, they come across what appeared to be some ancient, very large buried statues, one of which produces spherical attack drones from its eyeballs, causing them to have to dive for cover. During a conversation with Tilly, Saru calls Tilly ensign at one point and then refers to her as lieutenant in the next moment while they're trying to figure out how to take out these drones. With the help of Captain Reynard, Tilly figures out what's powering the drones, and it's the planet's electromagnetic field. So they decide to set their phasers on overload near the source of the drones so that the explosion will disrupt the connection of the magnetic field to the source of the drones, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Though it does make sense that the phasers would just destroy the thing, which they said they're trying not to do because it could cause a chain reaction and destroy what they're looking for, assuming it's there. But then they do it anyway. Of course it works, and the electromagnetic field shuts down temporarily, but not before Saru uses his ganglia to take out a couple of the drones, which is weird because I thought he lost his ganglia a couple of seasons ago. Book thinks he realizes where the Marauders are from, so he sends them a message on the 32nd century version of the dark web. Michael and Saru find a Romulan poem that seems to point them in the direction of Beta Z, but Michael realizes that they're missing a verse from the poem and that they need to find that to know where they really need to go. Book speaks to the Marauders, and they seem to know what the book leads to, though I'm not sure how that's possible. And nothing of value is gleaned from the conversation, seemingly. Michael and Saru find the fifth verse and are able to beam off the planet before the electromagnetic field comes back online. Michael also found a type of key underneath one of the statues that happens to fit a 3D printed version of a symbol in the diary, but it's only one key out of 5, of course. It turns out that the fifth verse points towards Trill. On a hunch, Book de-ages an image of the Lady Marauder from the hologram conversation and seems to realize who she is and that he's never met her before, but he knows that her name is actually Molina, which is why she goes by Maul, and he says that she has a connection with his mentor, making her the closest thing to family he's got left. Michael and Saru have a tearful goodbye, and then Michael talks to the Admiral, who explains that he asked Captain Rayner to take an early retirement because of how he acted on the planet and because of his abrasive attitude, despite his excellent record, which is absolutely ridiculous given how many times Michael did much worse crap and got promoted for it. So Michael goes and talks to the captain and urges him not to actually take early retirement and to instead join her on Discovery as her number 1, which on the one hand is a brilliant move from a writing standpoint because he'll serve as a foil for her, and so that's fine. But I'm concerned that he's a little bit too headstrong for it to work the way something like that should work. You want a foil that's going to bust your nuts, so that there's conflict and tension. But this guy's off the charts, and so he's very domineering. So I don't see how it's going to work. And it's dumb on the other hand anyway because he's a captain. And even though Saru was serving as her number 1 after having been promoted to captain, it was because of a special situation where they were both already assigned to the same ship. I don't know. Maybe they'll give him a rank reduction as part of his penance in addition to him agreeing to give up his ship. And, that would make it make more sense, but they probably won't. It's better than having him end up leaving the fleet for such a minor thing, given Michael's history, which she even talks about, noting how she got a second chance, which is funny because she got a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance and possibly a fifth chance by my count. So it's just dumb. It's dumb. The thing is, I like the character. He's kind of a jerk. And, like I said, he's a foil for Michael. It's just that he's so over the top. I don't see it working the way it worked in this episode once he's her number 1, unless he takes a serious chill pill. Because, when they're equals, it's one thing, right? So I don't know. This episode, again, I didn't like because of all this dumb, and these characters don't act like people in a military organization. Tilly is still goofy. It's just, it doesn't strike me as Star Trek, for one thing. And then they do dumb stuff that wouldn't work on Battlestar Galactica or MASH. Like, for example, like I was saying before, Captain Burnham, did you agree with the decision of, Captain Rayner to blow up the... No, she didn't. And you know that because the comms were being monitored. And Dr. Kovich knows she didn't. And she probably put it in her report. And if she left it out of her report, they didn't say that. And it would have been against protocol. So, it just was dumb. They wanted to give her a moment in the story to be gallant. They wanted to give her a moment of gallantry where she tried to cover for him. But it was just dumb because everybody knew what happened. So, again, these episodes looked really good. There was some impressive action stuff. The shield thing in the, previous episode being one of them, even though I thought it was kind of dumb. These ships came into the atmosphere and pitched themselves in the desert like this with the, and neither ship launched a shuttlecraft to chase the Marauders at that point, which is dumb. So I don't know. And then, they didn't deploy the same fake warp signatures when they got away the second time, which is dumb. So it's just full of dumb. It's the same stuff they've been doing for 3 seasons. It's the same. We're going to go here and find this clue, and going to go there and find that clue, and we're going to go here and find that clue that they've been doing for 3 seasons. And it's just bad. The performances are good. That's a plus. Sonequa Martin Green is good. The guy who plays Vance is good. The guy who plays Captain Raynar is good. The guy playing Saru, whose name I forgot, even though I shouldn't have, is doing a good job in his part, but it's in a crap fest. It's in a crap fest. And I just, at least they got past the point where every 5 seconds they're breaking canon with technology that didn't exist in the time period. At least we're past that. That's the one saving grace of this jump to the 32nd century that they made last season. Anyway, that's really it. I'm just going to repeat myself if I keep talking, so I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to review next week's episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.